Now that we have taken a look at what is about to happen in Rage of the Abyss with this most recent OCG metagame report basically releasing this abomination of a deck onto the OCG, I want to have a little bit of a discussion about this upcoming August Forbidden and Limited list with you guys. I personally think this is something that needs to be prevented. The Azamina cards basically just fill the holes that the consistency hits have left for Snake Eyes in the OCG, leaving to a just as consistent and even more powerful version of Snake Eyes. Believe it or not, this is an even more powerful version of Snake Eye Fiendsmith that we have in the TCG at the moment, because it has basically the same amount of starters, more extenders, more powerful end boards, more Omni Negates from the Azamina cards, all that. I have done a ban list discussion, I think like 6 weeks ago or something. That was before I had played the European Championships with Infinite Forbidden, so that one was pre-info. So I wanted to redo it because we do know the ban list is happening in August, and I just want to talk about a couple of different things that are going on with the game right now. And I want to start by saying that I have kind of changed my mind on how I approached Snake Eye in the latest discussion. What I proposed was a banning of original Sinful Spoils. One of the main arguments that people make when they say they are not gonna hit Snake Eye as hard in this upcoming Forbidden and Limited list, or that it's more of a prediction, right? But people are saying they still need to sell Diabellstar in the quarter century Bonanza, and they want to sell the Mega Tins that is gonna have all the Diabellstar stuff in it. On the one hand, I understand this. On the other hand, you still have to think about the health of the game. In the long term, is it gonna make you more money if you leave Snake Eye alone to sell the tins, but then people are incredibly annoyed by Snake Eye for a couple more months? I would argue for the overall health of the game, it's better if you hit Snake Eye now, like seriously. The reason why I have moved away from this original Sinful Spoils idea is because I think there is a world where you can hit Snake Eyes, but you can still make people interested in the Diabellstar cards. Think of Diabellstar in other decks that aren't doing anything super crazy. There are plenty of decks that are just not being played much at the moment, but that can still use Diabellstar plus original Sinful Spoils. Rescue Ace, Fire King, even something like Infernoid are completely viable and strong Yu-Gi-Oh decks that are just being overshadowed by the dominance of Snake Eyes. Even TGs, out of all things, right? There's other decks that in the past have made great use of Diabellstar wanted original Sinful Spoils, but are just overshadowed by what you can do. Why would I summon Ponix with original when I can summon Snake Eye Ash and do what Snake Eye Ash does, right? A quote-unquote elegant way is to just leave original alone, kill Snake Eye. No questions asked. On this ban list, we're gonna kill Snake Eye. We're gonna kill it, okay? Don't worry. But if we leave original intact and we leave Diabellstar out there, I feel like you can still play it. And those decks at the same time also get more viable because we're gonna kill Snake Eye. That's my way of thinking about it. Let me know if you agree with it. Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think that could be an approach. And for that, this guy needs to go, or this guy needs to go. I am past the point where I'm gonna throw any of these cards in limited, because at this point, I don't think limiting anything is not gonna do it for Snake Eye. Look at the OCG right now. They're playing one Flamberge already. They're not even playing Temple anymore. That's another thing I want to bring up. People are suggesting banning Temple. Temple is an incredibly powerful card. The deck does not go anywhere if they ban Temple. The deck is still insane. You can play around Nibiru 10 other ways. Temple is not the card we need to hit. I don't think they're going to ban both. I think one of the two is somewhat realistic though. I don't know what to say other than I hope something drastic happens to Snake Eye, because I'm convinced Snake Eye is not necessary to sell those cards. I think Azamina is still going to be played. I think Diabellstar is still going to be played. So one of these two, I think, needs to go. I'm convinced. If they ban one of those, I'm not sure if we need to do anything else to Snake Eye. Even though I would totally be on board with a Ash limit or Wanted limit, I think the OCG clearly shows that those are not doing anything, because this is still the most dominant deck in the OCG. Ban something out of Snake Eye. Don't just limit something that we can just replace with another broken engine. Speaking of broken engines, let's talk about what would happen in a hypothetical world where they hit Snake Eye in a meaningful way. Whether they kill it or not, different topic, but we're expecting a hit to Snake Eye, right? We're demanding a hit to Snake Eye. What happens? Yubel is still incredibly powerful. Tenpai is incredibly powerful. The Fiendsmith engine is also very, very powerful. I personally don't think they are gonna hurt Fiendsmith in a significant way. My favorite approach, honestly, if I had to make this decision, I would ban Lurie. However, I think this is one of the ones that goes into the wishful thinking category. And I made this category specifically to put some cards that I think would be the good decision for the health of the game, but I don't think they will do it because of other like monetary reasons, right? I think banning Fabled Lurie would be a pretty elegant way to hit the Fiendsmith cards in their core like power, but still leaving them as a good engine. And the same is true for Moon of the Closed Heaven. Moon of the Closed Heaven is just a common from Infinite Forbidden. No one is going to be losing tons of money because they're going to ban Closed Heaven. Part of me just thinks they want the Fiendsmith cards to be as powerful as they are. I think they want it to be good in a lot of different decks, which is why this card is needed. I personally would ban this card in a heartbeat. That's why I'm putting it in wishful thinking, because I wish they would do it. I don't personally believe they will. Something that I think everyone is predicting is for Beatrice to be banned. This is something I won't even elaborate that much on. The things that this card does in any deck that uses the Fiendsmith cards is completely insane. Fiendsmith is an incredibly powerful engine even without Beatrice existing. They have so many other options of what they can do. They can still make early Appaloosa. They can still make Wave Hiking Caesar. They can still make a Volzar Lars. They are still incredibly efficient. So banning Beatrice will not hurt the viability of Fiendsmith whatsoever. It'll just make it less toxic. Part of me wants Wave Hiking Caesar to be banned. I think this one is wishful thinking though. I would do it, but I don't think they will. And now let's talk about Yubel. The reason why I don't love the Yubel deck is because Yubel honestly feels like a watered down version of Snake Eye. In my mind, what one Nightmare Throne does is not that different conceptually from what one Snake Eye Ash does, right? Like the only difference, Yubel has less starters and less powerful like extenders as well, right? Like I think it's more realistic that you can interrupt Yubel. They have more choke points basically, because when your Samsara D Lotus gets ashed and you can't prevent it, that's kind of hard to replace. You need like multiple cards to make up for that. Still, only because the deck is a watered down version of Snake Eye does not mean it's okay, because Snake Eyes is incredibly powerful. Yubel is just a little bit worse. And so I do wish that they would do something about Yubel. Here's my problem. I think it's incredibly hard to hit Yubel. A lot of the cards are very, very new. Fiendsmith is a large part of the deck. So the only thing that's left is hitting Yubel itself. For the health of the game, for game design purposes, this is a phenomenal thing, right? Phantom to 1 is incredibly smart game design wise. That is something that should happen in my opinion. I think that's wishful thinking. I don't think that's happening, but I still wanted to mention it. Honestly, this should have said you can only summon this once per turn anyways. They fumbled the bag when they didn't put that sentence on that card. We all agree on this. I've never met an individual who didn't agree with this statement. I feel like every time Phantom of Yubel is mentioned, the first thing someone says is should have been once per turn. So this card is the perfect card to put to limited, but it's also the most expensive card in the Yubel archetype. So that's why I think it's wishful thinking for this to happen right away. Which leaves us in this very awkward spot. We have to think about what we do to Yubel if we can't really hit Phantom, and we also can't really expect the Fiendsmith cards to get hit. What do? I didn't even include Nightmare Throne, but I guess you could limit Nightmare Throne. I wouldn't hate that, actually. But that's also kind of expensive, and it's also not super old. And everything else that's left feels like it is super odd for it to be on the ban. Like, for example, I think banning Yama, like, let me finish, okay? Calm down. But banning Yama would hit the deck in a meaningful way, right? And I hate how Unchained is just catching strays. Unchained did nothing wrong. Unchained was such a cool deck in the format. It's not Unchained's fault that Yubel is abusing Yama in its combo. All the other Yubel cards are quote-unquote unhittable. I really don't like this, but I do think it is a more realistic hit than Phantom of Yubel to 1. But still, I would not do this. And then there's another card that I frequently see brought up, and that is Opening of the Spirit Gates as like a limit or ban. And I gotta say, this feels kind of similar to Yama in the sense that, dude, the Sacred Beast deck didn't do anything wrong. But we've talked through most of the options that we have for hitting Yubel, and this seems like the one that's like the most realistic, quote unquote, like limiting opening. I wouldn't hate it. It's a very weird position for Yubel. Tenpai, I think pretty smooth. I want this card to be limited. I think this is the one time where I agree with the OCG. on something. They have limited this card. Tenpai is still incredibly powerful over there, so clearly it does not kill the deck. It is by far the hardest card to interact with. With one copy, you at least eliminate the chance of them having a second one, right? One interaction with a spell trap against Tenpai, you can get rid of the field spell, and then you can use your other interactions to actually interact with their field. Because in the TCG, honestly, it's incredibly likely that they can even find a second one, because they got Terraforming, 3 copies of the field spell, 3 copies of Prosperity, and the card is even searchable. Set Rotation, they've been using that as well. Sang and Summoning, I think, is a perfect card to be at 1. And unironically, I have not many other issues with specific decks in the format. We're going to talk about some extra deck staples and other staples. I think it's time for Skill Drain. Realistically, this gets limited. I would ban it. One of the reasons why Skill Drain is so powerful is because they just made a lot of decks that can ignore your floodgates on your own turn. That's just another thing about Snake Eye and also White Forest. The ability to continuously send away your face-up trap cards to just keep playing on your own turn. I don't know if it was intended, but it's incredibly strong. So I think Skill Drain needs to be here. Whether you're looking at meta decks, if you're looking at more rogue-ish decks, whether you're looking at stun decks, this card is everywhere. It's ruining games. It auto-wins games. This card needs to be on the ban list. I would prefer if it was banned. My prediction is Limit. And here we have 2 cards that I think are wishful thinking. Calamity and Albion are 2 cards that I would like to see banned. My logic here, why I'm putting them into wishful thinking, is because if they didn't do that on the last ban list or the ban list before that, then why would they do it exactly now? Because these are like the only thing that really makes branded viable at the moment. It's the only thing that makes people want to play Centurion. In my opinion, the time was like a year ago. I'm just including these because they should be banned. I think Crossout should be limited. I think this card is frustrating to play against. I think Crossout has no business being at 3, especially when we've already realized this problem with Called by the Grave, right? Like we've put Called by the Grave to 1 years ago, and people still say Called by should be banned, but we've kind of like made our peace with the fact that Called by the Grave is limited. And Crossout is even seeing more play at the moment than Called by, because Crossout has this thing going for it where if you're playing 15 hand traps yourself, you can cross out some cards that can't be called by, like Nibiru and Imperm. And also, if you have the same hand trap in your hand, you are not locking yourself out of it. Like if I have an Ash and my opponent has an Ash, I would rather cross out the Ash than Called by the Ash. In the way modern Yu-Gi-Oh is being played with those hand traps and such, Crossout is a more powerful card than Called by the Grave. And Crossout is even more frustrating when, for example, you're playing a mirror match and you don't have a hand trap, so your opponent gets to play, and then your opponent has Crossout, sets it, and completely fucks you up on your turn. Because he takes out a super incredible like engine piece from your deck, so you don't even have a chance to play into their board. It plays way too much into the concept of going first is too strong in Yu-Gi-Oh. I feel like it's time for Crossout because it's been out, you know, they've sold the initial print, they've sold the reprints. This thing was in 2 megatons. Wasn't it even in Rarity Collection? I think it was. It's time. Crossout needs to go to 1. As much as it pains me to say it, I've included this card in probably every single ban list discussion I've had. I think Shifter is wishful thinking at this point. Let me clarify, I would have put this card on the ban list in the blink of an eye. Here's why I feel like they want to keep this card around. This is one of the few cards that is making rogue decks playable by being toxic, which is not the right way to make rogue decks viable, in my opinion. But at least with the power level that the game is at currently, this is the kind of card that might keep someone playing who really hates like Snake Eye or Yubel or whatever. I don't like that this is how it is, but I think Shifter is going to stay. Please don't twist my words. I don't think this is a good logic. I don't agree with this logic, but that's why I'm putting it into wishful thinking, right? Like I would hit it. Don't make it like I'm justifying Shifter. I'm not. I'm just trying to make a prediction, and I don't think they're going to hit it this time around. And I am happy to be wrong. Prosperity is, I think, in a similar spot as Crossout Designator, where I'm not sure maybe the logic why they kept it around for so long, because they felt like they wanted to reprint it a couple more times, and now it's time. Hopefully this card goes to 1. You're still gonna play it at 1. It's still gonna be a really powerful card at 1. I don't think it has any business being at 3. Every time there's a problematic card like Skill Drain, Prosperity amplifies that problem because it can be played in so many decks and because it can find those cards so consistently, while also just being an incredibly consistency card. Like if you don't need a floodgate right now but you need a starter, Prosperity is gonna find it. If you need a board breaker going second, Prosperity is gonna find it. It's such a powerful card and it has no business business being at 3. Rivalry, this stands for all of these floodgates that are limited. In my head, I'm a little confused as to why all these cards are at 1 specifically. This is just something that in my head doesn't really make sense. My only guess is that they want some amount of floodgates to be in the game. I think it's weird. I think they won't ban rivalry. I think it's wishful thinking that they ban more floodgates. I'm very happy if they at least hit skill drain. That is the minimum I'm expecting towards floodgates. Look, if this was my list, this card would be up here in an instance, okay? I'm just trying to wrap my head around whether they will actually do it or they won't. Now, I will say, I also did not expect them to ban Baron the Fleur. I did not expect them to ban Borreload Savage Dragon. I like the fact that they are starting to hit generic extra deck monsters, and it makes me hopeful that they hit Apo as well. I am frustrated with Appaloosa for a couple of reasons. I hate how Appaloosa is never where it ends, right? Like most of the decks don't make an Apo and then pass, because if that was the case, then I would be okay with it. You can play against just Apo, that's fine. The problem is what happens after Apo, because most of the decks summon Apo and then keep going, right? They keep going and keep going and keep going. It's like out of like the whole combo spreadsheet, there's like 50 steps and Apo is like step 5. Make Apo insulate the rest of your combo from all of your opponent's hand traps except for Imperm, and then keep cooking, right? And then at the end, you have your Snake Eyes board or your Yubel board or your Fiendsmith whatever board, your Memento board, whatever it is, you have that, plus you have Apo. And suddenly, the Appaloosa that you could maybe have outed with a single board breaker spell is no longer outable because those other cards make Omni Negates next to it. I think Appaloosa is incredibly problematic if it's paired with Omni Negates. Appaloosa itself stops all the monsters in your opponent's hand. The Omni Negates stop your opponent's spells. So how do you out Apo? That's right, you don't. I think Appaloosa will be banned. I don't know if it's exactly right now. You guys are right. The card was just reprinted in Rarity Collection 2. But remember Baron? Baron was printed in Rarity Collection 1, right? That was the set that finally made Baron affordable. And it still got banned. So I don't think it's impossible for them to hit Appaloosa. My problem with IP Masquerena is the following, and I want you guys to think about this for a second. I don't remember the last time I was genuinely annoyed by my opponent ending on IP Masquerena if it wasn't summoned off of Flamberge. Am I tripping? Honestly, I can't even think of a different deck that really ends on IP Masquerena right now. Sprites? Yeah, okay. I think Sprites is not a problem. Personally, and this is under the condition that we hit Snake Eyes massively, I think I'm okay with IP Masquerena. I think IP Masquerena, in terms of what it provides, is a strong end board piece, but I don't think it is overly powerful. I think what makes it powerful is that you summon it, you link it off for Princess, you bring back Flamberge, you put it in your spell and trap zone, it comes out for free on your opponent's turn, and it also lets you link off the stupid Flamberge Dragon, that you can get your floating effects and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, I think IP Masquerena in its core is fine. I think Flamberge is what makes it too powerful. Promethean Princess, on the other hand, I think is a card that will inevitably be banned. This card does too much. And here is the thing. I think there is a world where this entire ban list looks different. They could do something like ban IP Masquerena and ban Promethean Princess. And maybe also Appaloosa, which takes away a lot of the end board pieces from Snake Eyes, right? I don't think it would be enough. I think they would have to do other things, which is why specifically I'm doing it this way around. But that's what they tried last time. I would not prefer this. My take on Promethean Princess is the following. I think this card needs to be banned eventually, but once again, kind of similar to IP Masquerena, whenever I summon Promethean Princess in like Salamangrate or Fire King, it feels like a good card, but it doesn't feel like something that I would ban. I think I would like to see a world where they just get rid of Snake Eye and people can actually play Princess in other fire decks and maybe have a room to compete with it. I don't think this is going to happen yet, but I think it will eventually. This card is kind of like, it's giving me Sprite Elf vibes. And then the last card I wanted to include just because I felt like it was Druid Worm. I just included this because I felt like this card is at 1 in the OCG. This card is at 1 in Master Duel. Bystials are incredibly popular ever since they came out. Druid Worm to 1 just... It feels right to me. And you can still play up to 8 Bystials. If Bystials are good, you can play enough Bystials. On purpose, I did not include anything that could come off the ban list. Quite frankly, I think it is more important right now to talk about what needs to happen with the things that are legal. Because obviously, they could bring back cards, but that's not going to fix the game, right? Where's Fountain? Where it belongs, not on the discussion. And once again, before we round off on this discussion, personally, at least, for me, this upcoming August ban list is very important. Sometimes there are ban lists where you think to yourself, or where I think to myself, you know, it'd be nice if we got some changes, but it also isn't incredibly important. But sometimes I feel like the game is in a spot where it needs some help. And right now is one of those spots. Do you think we have a nuclear ban list like in 2015 format? I think it's kind of the same situation. I think it has to happen. Whether it's now or in 2 months or in 3 months, whatever. But we're gonna need it soon. We need a little bit of a nuke on some of the things that have been happening in the game recently. I don't want this Flamberge and Poplar ban because I don't like to kill decks. Maybe Temple ban is the way to go. Limit Snake Eye Ash and Flamberge and it's fine. This is the best deck in the OCG right now. 1 Flamberge, 1 Ash, no Temple. We're past that point. Flamberge is at 3. They decide to play 1. Temple is at 3. They decide to not play it. With all due respect, those changes are ass. And I agree with you. I don't love completely killing a deck, but sometimes in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, that is what needs to happen. That's what needed to happen with Dragon Rulers. That's what needed to happen with Necros. That's what needed to happen with Tier. You cannot make this deck weaker. Like, this deck can replace all the things you take away from it so easily. A limit does not do it. And banning like a random card in the archetype, like banning Oak or something, like, it's not enough. We read through it earlier. This one continuous spell gets you Snake Eye Ash in hand with your normal summon still available, Closed Moon on the board to go into your Fiendsmith combo, and an Omni Negate from the Azamina fusion. And there is no Oak or Temple or anything involved. They have created an absolute monster in Snake Eye, and they need to get rid of it.